Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Underground. This is the update for the Kabul situation, the situation in Afghanistan for August the 25th. This is the evening edition. I already did one this morning, but this is the evening edition. This is being recorded at 2200 Eastern Standard Time to get the information out as quick as possible. So let's just jump right into it with the biggest update, and this is the guidance that is coming from the U.S. Embassy is for personnel who are not within the airport perimeter right now, avoid the airport. The embassy is stating that there are significant threats to personnel at both the North Gate and the Abbey Gate, and also the East Gate as well, and really the Barron Hotel complex as well. So the embassy is advising people to just not come to the airport. Now, this is a second time the U.S. Embassy has stated this, and the Department of State has stated this. So, and they flip flopped on it before. So clearly, the situation is not really settled. Clearly, some people probably disagree about this threat assessment, and I don't want to really spread rumors or anything, but this announcement has to be viewed with a little bit of skepticism, considering the situation. The United States is leaving. They're drawing down their troops right now, so it's almost like I imagine I'm a person on the ground and I'm not inside the airport, and I'm standing outside waiting to get in, and they're not letting me in, and they're saying, "Oh, now there's a threat on the gate. Now go back home, go to your safe house, go sit down and wait for us to come get you." And they radio you the message as the last plane is leaving Afghanistan. Oh, by the way, we can't come get you now. Like, that's almost like what it seems like. So I really don't want to tell anybody what to do on this or give any advice on it. I'm just saying that if I was on the ground, I would be viewing this with a lot of skepticism. At this point in time, if you stay in Afghanistan, the risk is extreme. If you stay at the airport, the risk is extreme. The risk is extreme either way, but one way could involve you leaving the country and not sitting in a hotel room and watching the president give a speech about how, oh, I wish we could have gotten everybody out. So it's kind of frustrating to sit here from an analytical perspective and see these kinds of statements going back and forth. Even if there is a genuine threat, I think people would be willing to face that threat at this point. And considering that the Taliban are manning every inch of the gate and ISIS is their adversary, they've been fighting ISIS for a very long period of time, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say this. And this kind of ties into the next point, which is the United States has been observed to be forcibly evacuating reporters from the grounds. Several foreign, not U.S. reporters, several foreign reporters were reportedly forced onto aircraft against their will and forcibly evacuated from the airport. Now, granted, these are journalists, right? So they love to sensationalize everything. So it could be just as simple as some guy in a uniform saying, "Hey, you guys should probably leave now. This is getting kind of spicy out here." And they take it as oh, we had to get on the aircraft at gunpoint. We don't really know because reporters are not really trustworthy. So it does, however, the fact that this does seem to have happened to some degree, the United States most certainly learned from the first evacuation. Okay, we have to realize that the United States screwed things up the first time, and rather than do the right thing and fix the problem by getting aircraft for people out, the United States is taking the policy of, well, let's just make sure that there aren't any cameras to record people falling off the aircraft this time. Do you see? That seems to be what they're doing. Now, granted, that is a leap, but it's not a really huge leap. And if I was on the ground, I would definitely be thinking that's the case. Ever since this whole thing started, the U.S. government has constantly made the wrong decision, constantly. So one has to look at the removal of reporters from the situation with a lot of apprehension about the immediate future. And continuing on with the evacuation of personnel, most U.S. forces are continuing to retreat. There has been a lot of talk about how the civilian personnel on the ground that were flown in to process visas are now gone. That's every country is handling this differently, and it's hard to say. I haven't seen any positive information either way to indicate whether or not the United States is still processing visas and still getting people inside or not. but it does seem like they're not. The United Kingdom has announced about 12 hours ago that they're going to be evacuating within the next 24 to 36 hours, and they've already evacuated most of their personnel. So, everybody's trying to beat this deadline with time to spare. Norway just announced that they are shutting down the field hospital, so the field hospital is no longer going to be active. Now, of course, there are aid stations and things like that, but the hospital that's been treating people this entire time, and they've also been looking after children whose parents were nowhere to be found. So I think they said they had 35 kids. Don't quote me on that, but they shut it down and they brought everybody back to Norway. The Polish Special Forces guys have already pulled out of there. Also, Germany is withdrawing as well. Germany's having a hard time with it because they're fighting political strife within their own country right now. But Germany has made statements to the effect that, hey, the United States is leaving. We're going to beat them out of there because we can't stay unless the United States stays. And this is coming all on the same day that there are reportedly, this is numbers from a lot of different people, the U.S. government, other nations. They're stating there are about 10,000 people still inside the perimeter as of right now. Hard to say if that number is accurate. I would say that probably no number is accurate. We probably don't even know how many people have actually been evacuated so far, but there are definitely still people on the ground. There are a lot of people inside the airport perimeter. There's a lot of people outside the perimeter, and there are a lot of people in the city and in the rest of the country. So that's unfortunate, and especially unfortunate because Congress sort of spilled the beans. There's a lot of mainstream news articles going out around from confidential congressional staffers, right, that are talking about the clandestine rescue efforts that have been undertaken. Now, we've been on the lookout for this kind of stuff, and we're not going to talk about it too much, but I will state that there have not nearly been enough clandestine efforts been undertaken to get people out. And that directly ties into the next point, which is U.S. politicians lying or distorting, or whatever you want to call it, the number of Americans that are left. So they changed the estimate from 15,000 people. 15,000 people the Biden regime was saying was still on the ground in just the Kabul area yesterday. And today, they're saying there's only 6,000 left in the whole country. So that's puzzling. I mean, I get it. Evacuations have been taking place. So that would, obviously the number's going to reduce for getting Americans out. That's good, right? But flights have been slowing down to a crawl for the past 24 hours. And the military people are evacuating. They're evacuating their own personnel. Like, we can do the math. We know how many people can fit on an aircraft, like in an emergency, right? The first numbers that came out of Afghanistan, there were 800 people on those aircraft. And let's just assume that we're going to keep those extremely cramped numbers, which they didn't keep for the majority of these evacuations. They're not loading that many people on these aircraft. But let's just say they did for a second. We know how many aircraft are transiting in and out of the country, and we can count. We know that there aren't any really clandestine efforts coming out of the country because Pakistan won't let anybody fly through their airspace with their transponder off. So there isn't like some kind of secret flight path that thousands of aircraft are taking per second to leave the country. No, we're doing the math here and it's not really adding up. Now, to walk this back and to put things in perspective, we obviously here are not on the ground, and we do not have, or nor will we ever have, the full picture of what's going on. So the intelligence gap, this chasm of things that we do not know is pretty big. But we can close that gap quite a lot using our OSINT skills, and everyone else who's in this sort of OSINT world can do the same thing too. But anybody who's in that community will tell you that OSINT is a valuable tool, but it can't tell you the whole picture, right? However, based on what the world has seen, the world of OSINT is very strongly indicating that hundreds or even thousands of American citizens will be left behind unless significant changes are made right now. Some could argue that we've already passed the zero barrier, right? And it's too late. And from the analytical side of the house, it certainly does unfortunately look that way. But even though our politicians and current senior military leadership are running away from this problem like a stabbed rat, we're not going to let this go until everybody's back home. So we're still working on things. And despite the Taliban stating that they are going to agree to let Afghans leave after the August 31st deadline, we don't really have a whole lot of faith for that. So if anyone, the Taliban in the beginning, let's remember, stated that we're not going to let Afghans leave because we need their talent. That's what they said. And from the perspective of the Taliban, it kind of makes sense. You don't want all of your subjects to leave the country. So it makes sense for the Taliban to restrict Afghans from leaving. However, I don't think that the art of the deal was done and we gave the Taliban anything. I literally think the Taliban are lying in order for the Americans to just leave, and then they're going to do what they want. I know we're all shocked I say, right, to hear that the Taliban might be telling a fib, but it certainly seems like I would be very surprised. Let me put it this way. I would be very surprised if the Taliban actually let any aircraft take off after August 31st. That would be very surprising. And I would be very surprised if they let any um, aircraft land after August 31st as well. Also, I didn't put it on the slide, but I did want to speak to it. There are a couple of rumors going around that I just wanted to touch on and to let people know to kind of look out for. First off is the rumor of fuel shortages. A lot of people are complaining that there's very little gasoline for vehicles left in Kabul, which kind of makes sense. You've got a sharply increased demand. Everyone who had a vehicle has transited. They've used it in the past week or so, shuffling people around and things like that. So the demand has been sky high, way more than normal. Granted, that's been balanced out by people not exactly using their vehicles to go to work or anything. So it kind of balances itself out. But I do find it interesting that the Taliban has taken efforts to try to increase the oil and petroleum deals between Iran over the past 24 hours. That kind of signals that there's probably a problem there. So it makes sense that fuel would be in short supply. It's a third world country, so the fuel situation is not exactly going to be a positive one. And also the other rumor is that some people probably saw this a couple of days ago, but there was a rumor that a Ukrainian plane was hijacked and flown to Iran. From what we can tell, this is not true. The Iranians say it's not true, but of course they're not trustworthy, right? But also the Ukrainians say that that this didn't happen either. The source for this, I should mention, is Russian state media. So this came from the Itar TASS, or I think they're just called TASS now, which is one of their 3 or 4 main Russian state-sponsored media. So it would make sense for Russia to spread disinformation about Ukraine, particularly Ukraine, during a time like this. Disinformation is going around all the time. Propaganda is a thing now, so it's been kind of worked out. Everybody's kind of glossed over it, but just in case anybody sees anything, and as we look back on this event years from now, I just wanted to mention that we know that a Ukrainian plane did not get hijacked. Let's go ahead and jump to the map, and I'll show you the very minimal updates I have for the rest of the area on the ground. All right, so on the map, really there haven't been many changes at all, except the situation has gotten worse. Traffic has gotten worse. This stretch of road, Airport Road, as usual, has been blocked by the Taliban. Main gate is closed, hard closed, no one in or out. This stretch of highway here along the perimeter to Abbey Gate, still very, very congested. And actually, we did get some more imagery through open source means. We went ahead and geo-referenced it. So let me see if I could swing the map around and show you the number of people still left. Now, these people, you might be confused as to why they're on this side and why are they in the sewage canal there. This is the Hotel Baron complex, and since the cat's kind of out of the bag, I guess I can talk about it now. This has been one of the main areas for getting civilians and U.S. personnel out. So the Afghans figured that out, and as you can see, they are heavily invested in getting out of here because they could see helicopters moving back and forth, and they know they're landing over here. So I just thought I'd point that out because, like I mentioned, the cat's kind of out of the bag, for better or for worse. And let's talk about the North Gate situation. Much the same. I do have imagery of that, but it's not in this KMZ. I didn't load it in just yet. Traffic here along Russian Road is still very, very bad. Life is returning to normal, as normal as it can be under the Taliban's regime here throughout the rest of the city. It's really hard to tell what's kind of going on because social media posts have taken a sharp decline. I don't know if that's due to internet outages or anything like that. It might just be people not wanting to participate in social media. Um, and also, we have noticed that in some respects, the crowds have gotten kind of smaller. But it's hard to tell if that is due to people getting in on the base and getting on an aircraft and getting out, or if it's because people are just they're losing hope and they're going back home. I personally think that it's probably the latter, but hopefully it's the more optimistic choice there. As far as the Northern Alliance goes, I don't have hardly any updates. I do know a couple of things that have happened in Panjshir. The Taliban have entered a state of siege, and they have stopped all food shipments and really all traffic into and out of the main Panjshir Valley area. Uh, that's significant because the Taliban knows that they're in for a prolonged fight. It might not be a large fight, but it's going to be a prolonged fight to get some of those last guys out of there, which they almost certainly will do in the next few days to weeks. The first few waves of Taliban soldiers that have made their way up to Panjshir have gotten absolutely slaughtered by the guys up there, and the Taliban has taken devastating losses. But they've also given some losses as well to the Northern Alliance guys. So really, the situation has not changed as of August 24th. It's too dynamic to call. I don't even feel comfortable saying that these districts are in fact Taliban or Northern Alliance held. It's really just unclear at this moment, at least from what I can see. But hopefully, this will at least provide some kind of resistance for Afghanistan moving forward. And that's pretty much all I've got for today. Kind of a short one. Not really much to talk about other than a lot of geopolitical stuff, which isn't really helpful to people on the ground. But we're constantly updating the KMZ. We're working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Maybe not stuff that's particularly effective, right? We're facing the law of diminishing returns, right? With every day that goes by, we're able to be less and less effective, not more and more effective. So our efforts here are not being as effective as they used to be. If they were effective in the first place, we don't know. But in any case, we are working on a lot of stuff. We're brainstorming, we're thinking, we're trying to put ourselves in the shoes of any Americans or people in general in Afghanistan who are trying to leave. And myself and the rest of the team here are trying to figure out ways of getting out. Right now, it doesn't look super positive, like I mentioned before. This could end up very well being a situation like a civilian version of SEER, where we're quite literally going to be watching people hike on foot or on vehicles that are still running, or even on horseback or whatever, through the mountains to a neighboring country. Hopefully that won't be the case, but we'll see. We're going to plan like it is, and if we're pleasantly surprised by some kind of miraculous evacuation efforts, then all the better. But for now, we're going to keep our ear to the ground. We're going to continue developing out the rest of the country. We've been working on developing out not just the Kabul region, but the rest of the country, and we're going to be pushing that out as soon as we have something that is tangible. So hopefully that was helpful for everyone. Again, just wanted to show this slide for anyone who is who has not seen our previous briefings on the subject. We've been cranking out these briefings pretty often, and we've been updating the KMZ that I just showed you on the map quite consistently several times a day for about a week now. And everybody remember to just keep your head up, keep your chin up, and we're going to get everybody out of there. Regardless of what happens, we're going to make sure that happens. So just keep telling yourself that and keep moving forward, and we will see you next time. And as always, fight in the shade.